howdy, come and welcome to another episode here for the Funky Pod. It's the weekend. This means we talk about teaching, higher education, innovative teaching methods, hopefully, and just how to improve classroom atmosphere, outcomes, so whatever we want to talk about. And as you can see, A, from the thumbnail, and B, if you're watching this as a video and not only listening as a podcast, I appreciate both, of course, but as you can see, if you're watching behind me, talking about classroom management today. And hey. So before you switch off already, before you say, classroom management, okay? I know classroom management at like college, uni level, it might sound a bit dry, while the background noise you're hearing are my cats going crazy, because every time I start recording, my cats are going crazy. That's basically like when you start teaching in class and then students are still walking in, even though it's been like 10 minutes since the class would have started, right? So don't be distracted by that. I try not to be distracted either. So stick with me when I talk just a little bit about classroom management. I do like those first 3-4 episodes here to have like this ground base level and that we can fall back on, and then we try to amp it up a little bit. Okay, so that's the plan, right? So what we're doing in class is basically too, right? So why do I talk about this though? Well, I think that actually cultivating like a productive learning environment, right? It makes sense, is crucial for student success, and also, of course, not only for success, but also engagement leading up to that success, I believe. And so now I'm going to try to share a few tips for managing like classroom structure at university level. Okay. Let's start. I try to find a smooth transition. I should note down my transitions too, right? But just like in class, you try to figure out what are the best ways to transition from like intro to the topic and so on. So let's jump right into that. I have a few points I want to go through, and let's make it work, right? So the first thing that I learned now over like experimenting, trying things, changing structures and so on, is that you gotta establish clear expectations. And again, while it might not sound particularly, I don't know, crazy or like insane revelation, it's something that I struggle with a little bit, because I always thought, hey, guys, girls, everyone, just trust me. I'm the professor here. Just follow me. Trust me. I know what I'm doing. And while I still think, of course, that I know what I'm doing, it's still important for this, because the students don't know what you know, obviously. So it's important that you actually establish expectations so that they know what you expect and like what they're expected to do, but also what they can expect from you, right? So your first day of class, for example, and it doesn't need to be dry, obviously. It doesn't need to be like, here are 27 bullet points of what I expect from you. It's boring, of course, but you could have them collaborate. Like you could create a guideline together, for example, for like a guideline for conduct, for example, how to conduct yourself during lectures. Sounds boring, but if they work on it, maybe it's even like some form of team building measurement, right? You could have like this then as a discussion, of course. It's like some kind of group work, even if it doesn't relate to the topic that you're teaching, of course, but it bonds. It helps to bond. It's like team building, right? You could emphasize certain values, like I'm German, right? So first thing I mentioned is, of course, punctuality. But also like, let me see what I also wrote down here. Active listening, of course. Respect. How to behave when other students are presenting, for example, right? You could set some policies for tech use, for attendance, for deadlines, all those things. And if the students agree on that themselves, then there's nothing to complain about later, right? So if you then can enforce this mutually agreed upon expectations, and do this consistently, and use logical consequences, like the consequences, of course, should be also defined before. Yeah, so it's kind of like this, not a native speaker, carrots and sticks is a saying in English too, right? This carrots and sticks approach, like participation points, grade deductions, but as established with the students, right? So you're not just like throwing punishments left and right. If they establish that, you say, hey, guys, that's what you decided on. So now we're doing it. Okay. That kind of like gives ownership to the students. So they own the classroom culture. That makes sense. Right? So I think that has proven to be quite beneficial, especially in like freshman year and so on. When everything like, oh, I've got so much freedom. It's still new, right? So much freedom. No one really chasing me. While usually then in like more senior years, or even if they're about to graduate, they're more mature, of course, hopefully. But in freshman year, the things like this really, really helped us to have like more inclusive classroom culture, I want to say. And hand in hand goes what I now call, and the name doesn't really matter, like an organized, structured environment. What I mean by that is that like each session, we start with an overview, for example, of like what's going to happen today. Yeah, so it's kind of like a routine thing that they know, okay, it doesn't mean that every lecture is the same way, of course not. We have lots of active learning workshops and whatnot, right? What I mentioned in previous episodes, and also will elaborate on more in future episodes. But like a little bit of structure just helps to like settle in again, know, okay, now I got to focus. Yeah. So that's part of my structure, for example, is also just small talk. Like for the first few minutes, we just talk about current events, for example. And it's also part of the structure. So they know, okay, now I can sit down, relax, focus on the topics at hand, use my mind to think about stuff. So that could also help there. If you maintain some sort of routine, that also minimizes the time spent on organizing. Like, oh no, now we do this, now we do that. So, yeah, for example, also routine of, if you do an attendance check, I hate it, not doing it, or routine of like handing out papers, material, grading, assignments, whatever. But yeah, if you have like more of a routine there, that obviously minimizes the time that you have to spend if you just like wing it more or less, right? Also, and I hesitate because I hate it, but it works. You can use signals, for example, to refocus your class. And I always hated it because it feels so not university-like. It's not a college vibe, but it works. Like one of my colleagues actually introduced me to it, and she always raised her hand. Like, so we're doing like, the students are working in groups, doing whatever. And then she goes like, raising her hand, and students are like, okay, we have to focus on the teacher now. I hate it, but it works, so do it. I mean, you don't have to love everything that works, right? I mean, if it works, it works. It's a 1 second thing or 2 second thing. You just raise it, and then it works. So if it works, it works. Who am I to criticize that? It works. So you can use different signals. It doesn't need to be the hand raising, right? Different signals to just indicate, hey, it's time to focus again. You can play a sound. You can play something cool. Like, for a while, I used that intro from my podcast. Just play it like the 2 seconds that I live for the funk and I buy the funk. And then they knew, okay, now we have to listen again. So those things could also help. For example, to transition between lectures, discussions, group work, workshop, and so on. Okay. So one thing that I am now very high on, though, like, I mean, I'm also high on that signals thing. I just wasn't a fan of the high schooly vibe, but it works, so I like it. But one thing that I'm personally also very high on is like just that instructor-student relationship. It needs to be positive. There needs to be you don't need to be best friends, obviously. Maybe you shouldn't even be best friends, but there needs to be a form of mutual respect, understanding. They need to trust you. Right, so I think that's super important. So you got to learn about your students. You should know your students. So my students are always surprised that I know their names, that I know what they did last semester. And I remember them. So I teach first, second, and fourth year students in the bachelor program, and then other stuff later on. But once you had a class with me, of course I know who you are, right? So I remember, if you're in your fourth year, I remember what you did in your first year, for example. Students are always surprised by that. But hey, I mean, that's what we have this for, right? So get to know them. Like, that's also one reason why I do lots of small talk in the beginning. Like, I talk to different students, try to figure out like who they are, what their thoughts are, their stances, and so on. So learn about your students. You could do surveys, you could do chat before, after class. If you can, reference their perspectives when applicable. That's pretty cool. That's what I try to do too. And then while you do this, they're like, did he just reference me? What? And then you just get them right into the class, right? That's awesome. Share your passion for the subject you're teaching through stories so that they know, oh, you're really into it. You're not just teaching it stuff, you're really living it. Yeah, use humor to be more approachable. If issues arise, and there will be issues, there should be issues at time, you have constructive one-on-one discussions on focusing on problem solving rather than like lecturing like, no, I'm right, you're wrong. Yeah, that's important. This one-on-one day. Students need to feel heard. Yeah, always try first to understand their point of view and their challenges before you just dismiss it. Okay. I've got only like 2 more things on my agenda that I wanted to talk about. One more is also I'm taking like this school approach to now move it towards university college, right? Reinforcing, and it sounds again school-like, good behavior. And of course, I don't mean you don't give people like a stamp on their hand or on their book, or okay, 2023 you couldn't stamp on your body anymore, right? Because who knows? So a stamp on their book or whatever. But there are ways to reinforce good behavior and to praise positive conduct, like note positive conduct, praise, like, hey man, that was really cool. Like, oh, that was a great idea. For example, and that's a very basic one, but that also worked quite well. So I had like some group work stuff going on in some classes, right? Cross-cultural communication class was one. The other one was media and social diversity class. And in one class, students created like an infographic just to show their understanding of a certain topic. Like, hey, present the topic in a graphic visual way. And some were so good that I said, okay, hey, I send it to our faculty. They're going to publish it on the website, for example, or on social media. And the same thing in the other class where they had to do like some explainer videos. Some videos were so good. I'm like, hey, great job. It's going to be on the faculty website later, for example. And that's a very basic thing, but it's still like boosts the ego. They're like, oh my God, I did a great job. Awesome, nice. Oh, I keep going. So reinforce good behavior, right? Reinforce participation, listening, and so on. The participation points are a thing, of course. I think probably everybody has them somehow in the syllabus. But then also don't just wing it with them, right? You see me hesitating, or you hear me hesitating in the podcast, because the thing is this, right? Motivation, and I give lots of lectures on motivation, how to use motivation for storytelling, for marketing, for whatever. And so I did lots of research on motivation and stuff like this. And I'm not going to go into detail here, but well, there's a cat hair in my nose. I apologize. But so there are two forms. I'm not doing a lecture, but 2 forms, like extrinsic, intrinsic motivation, right? So extrinsic motivation is like, I give you money, you do it, or I give you an A. If you do this, you get an F if you do this, right? That's extrinsic, like forcing from the outside. Intrinsic is I study hard, I come to class on time because I really want to learn something, right? You really want, I'm going to go to football practice later, soccer football practice later, because I want to be the next Messi, right? Now my American audience also knows football. Nice, like football, not American football, but football. Football is life. Reference to Ted Lasso. Never mind. So extrinsic, intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic, I want to do it. Extrinsic, I'm getting forced to, I'm getting convinced to do it, right? So if you use extrinsic motivators too much, like, hey, you get an extra point here, you get an extra point there, they only do things for extra credit. They're not going to do it because they want to do it. So don't overuse extrinsic motivators, because the goal is to develop intrinsic motivation over time. And that can only happen if you build relationships. Okay? If they really feel like, hey, I'm really learning something here. If I keep doing those things, I'm getting better at it. Yeah, extrinsic motivators are great to kickstart things, but they're not great to keep going, because eventually then you teach students, in this case, to just keep doing things for extrinsic motivators. And that's not what we want. We want them to do it because they want to do it, because they want to learn something. Right? So that's quite important. Okay, lastly, you might come across some challenging situations here and there. And so then some tensions might arise, right? Important, of course, but that's a no-brainer. You stay calm. I mean, you're the professor, so of course you stay calm. If there's really something super intense, discuss things privately to understand the perspective. Be empathetic, of course. Never forget that, I mean, you're the professor, you're the older person, quite likely, right? So you should have more life wisdom, knowledge, and so on. So take a step back. Don't get mad. Try to understand the struggle. Because usually, like, this misbehavior, especially like in a university setting, grown-ups don't come to class to just mess around or to just be a pain in the ass, right? There must be some reason why someone is disruptive. So you're like, hey man, like, we both adults here, so what's happening? Maybe I can help you. So I think if you go on this level, that usually helps. Like, no one's, like, when you're 18 and older, you're not trying to be just an ass just because. I mean, yeah, maybe you're trying to show off, be cool in front of someone, but usually like that level of, hey, let's discuss first. If that doesn't work, yeah, then you might have to like make an example. But otherwise, I would always go to like collaboration first. Collaborate on solutions rather than like lecturing, and power struggles obviously are never the way to go, right? There's not like, yeah, I'm the boss here in this classroom. It never ends productively. You lose half the class. Some side with them, some side with you. You don't want that, right? So never do this. It's always empathy and patience that will get you to your goal. And usually you can get to the root of the root issue of the cause rather than just like kicking someone out, for example. Yeah. So I think that just makes sense. And I'm just saying this because also from experience, when I was a student, of course I was a very good student. I was like not a problem student, but I've seen it that professors yell at students back and forth, and no one's ever gonna win that, right? No one's getting out of that situation a winner. So empathy and patience are the way to go. All right, so that's my quick overview of like tips to foster like a more engaged, respectful learning environment when it comes to like how to set up the classes, classroom management. Let me know what works for you. Like what are you doing? What are you trying? How do you handle classroom management? What are the issues? Would also be interesting to share. I'm working on a WTF video right now also, so sharing some fails that I have encountered. So I don't want to look like, hey, I have all the answers, because clearly no one has all the answers. We're just experimenting and then sharing what works, what doesn't work, so that we can get better, right? So that's the plan here. So I'll be sharing some WTF soon. So also looking forward to hearing this, but also looking forward to hearing the FTWs. Are those references too old? Do they show that I'm not a Gen Z? But you know what I mean. So shout out in the comments, on social media at funkitpod, email if you want to, because you know academia and stuff. So we use email funkitpod@gmail.com. Otherwise, like, share, subscribe. It would be cool, because then we reach more people and we can have broader, wider discussions that reach more people. It would be cool. If you're listening on audio, leave a review. That would be fantastic, to also help with that. Other than that, I'm looking forward to hearing and reading your experiences, and also if you have anything that you want to have discussed, shout out, let me know. Happy to talk about all the things that occupy your mind. Until then, I'm heading into a very long weekend right now. We have a 6-day weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Yeah, it's a very long weekend. Awesome. And we'll talk next week. Until then, Sawadee Ka.